Here we are. Hi, Rachel. Welcome to Thursday. Hi, everybody. Wow, here I am. We didn't see you last week because I was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, celebrating so many things, Rachel. We had our this is huge week or 10 days for our family. We had 4 ceremonies as far as graduations from high school, from nursing school, from DPT, physical therapy school, and then we had a wedding ceremony. And so it was exhilarating and exhausting at the same time. And Rachel, one of the things that I think that we need to talk about in the future is
Mhm.
recovery.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
Like just recovery or vacation recovery or
Vacation recovery, yeah,
mhm,
event
mhm,
recovery, exercise
mhm,
recovery. Recovery is part of health.
mhm. Right. Right.
Yeah.
And if we don't plan for it, um,
Mhm.
we're not coming back in the same shape that we were before we left. And if
Right.
we don't catch up and recover, we don't actually jump right back in on an even playing field.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's bookmark that. I was just thinking about that. We need to talk about that, but
Okay.
so we'll put that on our list to talk about. But what are we talking about today?
Today, we are going to dive into. So, 2 weeks ago, we kind of did an intro to this series. And on the What's for Dinner podcast, we like to talk about all things health and well being. And we kind of introduce ourselves more formally. We kind of did a reintroduction to us last 2 weeks
Mhm.
ago. Who
Yeah.
are we, what we do, where we work, um, and kind of an introduction of ourselves and our services, but then kind of recognizing these GLP-1s and weight loss medications and where they're going in the world and where they've been. And we thought we would do a series on all things weight loss medications, since this is a very big
Mhm.
part of
Yeah.
your practice, certainly, and of the work that I do as a coach. And so that's the series this week. It's GLP-1s, right? And we're going to talk about
Mhm.
what your prescription doesn't come with.
Right.
So for so many people, they're getting these medications, they get a prescription, maybe it's online, maybe it's from their primary care provider, but it's just here, take this medication and here's your dosing. And then they're off and running.
Mhm.
And what
Mhm.
is not coming with that prescription is how, who, what, when, where, why, how, and
Yeah.
everything else. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So just as a reminder, we're not giving medical advice to people,
right.
but we are having a discussion about what is just so present
Hmm.
in social media right now and
Hmm.
what's out there.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about GLP-1s because they are prescription drugs, right? They are
Right.
prescription
Yes.
drugs. And one of the reasons, and there's a lot of press out there, bad
Hmm.
press, good press, um, and some fear and some thoughts, a lot of misinformation, if I can use
Yeah.
that term about them. And on the one, and it swings both ways. On the one side, it's magic. On the other side, it's horrible, terrible stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was thinking, like, why is that? So I'm trying to be, have that, channel Rachel, what's going on here? And I think that one of the reasons that there's so much hype about these GLP-1s is because it happens to help with weight loss, and weight in medicine has traditionally been so biased, or the
Mm.
thoughts around weight and weight
Hmm.
management and losing weight. There's so much bias, um, uh, so that these medications that help weight are
Yeah.
also going to engender bias,
Hmm.
right? Does that make
Yes.
sense? Yeah.
It does
And
make sense.
so,
Yes.
and the other thing I see is that then these medications are being used, and I'm going to say abused,
Hmm. Yeah.
outside of the physician office. And I'm going to say it's probably because of the bias that comes with helping people with weight.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Right. It really is. I think if you step back and watch what's happening, um, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's people taking this medication who don't actually um, medically have need for weight loss, but maybe they're using it for um, like beauty purposes, or just
Yeah.
trying to get
Cosmetic
the
stuff.
perfect,
Yeah.
the extra little 5 pounds off or something. And so what does that speak to the culture? What's the messaging there about,
Mhm.
we talk about body positivity, and so what's the messaging
Mhm.
happening there, and
Right.
what are we trying to do? And then
Yeah.
we've got it taken, with people who are really ill, medically ill,
Right.
metabolically ill, and people who have diabetes, and by people who don't have
Mhm.
diabetes. And right, so
Right.
the
Right.
spectrum is really, so there's this, like
Yeah.
you're saying, there's kind of a stigma on the medication, but who's taking the medication runs the full
Yeah,
spectrum,
the gamut.
full spectrum.
Right. And then the
Mhm.
medications are being used and prescribed outside of the
Mm,
the traditional medical office. I mean, so you've got these
right.
pop-up weight loss clinics all
Hmm.
over,
Yeah.
and which may not be, great as far as
Right.
the healthful use of these medications.
Hmm.
And I think it's because we're still in this diet culture. We're still in
Yeah.
this diet mentality. Yeah, and
Right.
we haven't embraced weight management or obesity as a medical condition that that can use the just the be treated with lifestyle and medication,
Hmm.
yeah, in a under the guise of a trained, you know, provider. Yeah.
Right. Right. Because there's so much more going on. There's so much more nuance. And I think even from what people can read online and try to educate themselves, there's so much more to it than that.
Mhm.
And I only know that because I work together with you, right? And
Mhm.
you share with me stories, and you help me understand the medication and help me really see what's going on. And you have all of these years of experience working with
Mhm.
people who are looking for help with their metabolic conditions, and
Yeah.
anywhere from diabetes and obesity and high blood pressure and all sorts of chronic illnesses. And what's working, what doesn't work, and it doesn't always work, right? It doesn't work
Mhm.
for
Right.
everyone, and there are reasons why.
Yeah.
And then just all of your experience with the different types of people. So I think we want to touch on that throughout the series of that. Who does it seem to work best for, if we can even pin that down?
Mhm.
What are the characteristics of the person, both medically and maybe part of their personality, or part
Mm.
of their ability. And then we'll get into things like exercise and what types of exercise are important for it and why. Malnourishment on a GLP-1. Does that happen? How? Why? And how to avoid it?
Mhm.
We'll also talk about prehabbing. There's a new term kind of
Mhm.
popping up, not just with GLP-1s, but with people who have any kind of surgeries or any kind of major medical procedures done. This concept of prehabilitation, getting your
Mhm.
body ready beforehand. Don't just do the PT after. So we'll talk about what does prehabbing look like if you're considering a weight loss journey.
Yeah.
For this week, we thought we would address a couple of general questions, and of
Mhm.
course, this is for the person listening who's already on their weight loss journey, already on a GLP-1, looking to start one, just curious, want to learn more. Maybe they have a loved one, a friend or a loved one who's on a GLP-1 or starting a weight loss journey, and they're trying to help get educated so they can be a supportive person, rather than coming from an uninformed and maybe that feeling of judgment because we don't fully understand it.
Mhm.
So, Dr. Gilbert, could you describe for the listeners, like, kind of what the medications are, what they do? Is there a
Right.
mechanism that we can understand a little bit better?
Yes. So very good. So yeah, so these medications, these GLP-1s, they're not brand new. They've been around a while now. And
Mhm.
actually the first one I ever used was called Bidarion. That was 20 years ago, 15. maybe 20. Anyway, and it was a little clunky, but the two main one, and so, that was one pharmaceutical company, and then they all kind of get in there and try to tinker and make them. And then, so the next one was then, liraglutide, which is, but then the two biggies that are semaglutide and tirzepatide. And actually, there's a third one that hasn't been released via the FDA, but interestingly, compounding pharmacies are already compounding this one. Yes, and it's called retatrutide. But anyway, and that's probably a discussion for another time. But the two main ones is semaglutide and tirzepatide. And semaglutide, came out originally for the diagnosis of diabetes, and it's called Ozempic. And then, because of the downstream effect of this medication of weight loss, the company went back to the FDA and asked for an indication for weight loss. And so the FDA said yes, and it was renamed a different name, and it's called Wegovy. So for people, so Ozempic and Wegovy are exactly the same molecule.
Same thing. Yeah.
Same thing. And then in the next over the next couple of years, another company came out with tirzepatide, which it actually affects two hormones. I'll go back and explain the difference here. But and so tirzepatide for diabetes is called Mounjaro, and then for weight loss is called Zepbound. So we have these two main molecules, semaglutide and tirzepatide, and they are both in the GLP-1 family. And GLP-1 is one of several hormones or peptide hormones that your body makes, that the human body makes, in response to eating a meal, to signal the brain that the body has enough food, has enough energy, has enough nutrients to manage the body for a certain period of time. And so when you eat, your body doesn't just release, the food goes, through the esophagus into the stomach, and then is processed there, and it goes into the small intestine. And then your body releases several hormones, not just GLP-1, but oxyntomodulin and PYY and CCK and one more GIP. And all of those go into the bloodstream, and they go back to the brain, and they press on the brake or the satiety center that says stop eating. So the GLP-1 medications, then they actually increase that signal from the gut to the brain to stop eating. So I think of hunger in 5 different ways, Rachel. So there is gut hunger, so when your stomach is empty, the cells in the stomach release ghrelin, and ghrelin then goes into the bloodstream to the brain to say, hey, we're hungry, eat something, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that these medications do is keep food in the stomach longer. So when you have food in your stomach, you're not making ghrelin. So in that way, you decrease that gut hunger. So you decrease gut hunger. The other thing then, so there's gut hunger, and then there's brain hunger. So some people never know that they're full. And so the second mechanism of action of these medications is to increase the signal to the brain that you're full. So it helps with gut hunger, and then it helps with brain hunger. And then very interestingly, for some people, Well, there's blood hunger, and that's when your blood sugar is low.
Mm,
Yeah. And when your blood sugar is low, your body it tells your brain to eat food and eat it right now, and mostly carbohydrates to get your blood sugar back up. I call that blood hunger. So gut
blood
hunger,
hunger.
brain
That's
hunger,
an.
blood hunger. And
I love
so
this. I haven't heard that
these
one.
medications, the GLP-1s, they help insulin work better. So that they help the insulin that you're making be more efficient. And so they stabilize blood sugar. So I know I'm being repetitive, but these medicines help with that gut hunger by keeping food in the stomach, decreasing ghrelin release. They increase the signal to the brain, so they help with the brain hunger. They stabilize blood sugar, so they help with that blood hunger. And then the fourth hunger
Mm-hmm.
is I call it habit hunger. And so we
Mm,
have cues in our environment, that, well, it's 6 o'clock, it's time to eat, or there's still food on my plate. I better clean my plate. So we have these habits of cleaning our plate or eating at a certain time, or maybe the television. Where's my popcorn? I'm sitting down for my show. So
mm-hmm.
we have habits, and it's very interesting because this isn't in the literature necessarily, and it certainly wasn't in the FDA research. But these medications, they turn down that habit hunger. And what I think, and this is my own little opinion,
Mm-hmm.
is that it slows down the cue and then
Mm,
the resulting action, so that you have a nanosecond of decision making, of awareness,
mm-hmm.
to say, well, actually, I don't want to do that right now. I don't want to reach for that cookie. I don't want to eat that, or I don't want to clean my plate. So it
Yeah.
really helps with that habit hunger.
Mhm. And that's really, we call that mindfulness. When we can
Hmm.
stretch the gap between cue and action. So now, we apply this to coach language. We know that when we can stretch out that space, normally with a habit, there's cue action. The brain goes, oh, there's an environmental cue or a trigger or a prompt, whether it's in your environment or it's an alarm or you see something, you hear something, right? Something is cueing you. Your brain triggers this cascade of events and you act. And it's usually pretty quick, and there's not a decision making in between, because that's what a habit is. I don't have to think about brushing my teeth, I just do it. But for these habits, when we can stretch the space, almost like I think of like the Matrix or any movie where you've seen something pause and go slow motion, and you have
Right.
this cue, and then you have like, what am I gonna do? you know and, and if you can figure out how to do that with any habit, now your brain is online. Your frontal cortex part of your decision making brain says, hold on, there's a habit going on, but is that what I want to do I
Right.
need to do it? What's my decision? And that's called mindfulness. So what you're
Mhm.
describing there as a habit hunger is that these medications allow the person to kind of have that moment. Sometimes it's a longer moment, and there's a where they see a cue happening and they kind of make a decision. It slows them
Mhm.
down.
Right.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that was number
Yeah.
4. So what's number
Yeah, that was
5?
number 4. Yeah, number 5 is our culture hunger,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I think we're
Yeah.
getting better. I think we're shifting in a direction away from fast food, from overfilling our schedules, from just not having enough time or making the time, or
Mhm.
of thinking that we just have to be so busy and so productive, and then and then making food and doing those human need things like eating
Yeah.
nourishing foods. There's just no time. So that's a cultural hunger,
Mhm.
which I think is starting to shift. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm hoping. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Mhm.
seeing, just as all of this just becomes talked about more and brought to the forefront, people are asking questions about what do we want our culture to say about food
Mhm,
and
mhm,
hunger
mhm.
and eating and nourishment. and
Yeah.
what and
Yeah.
how aware do people want to be of what they're eating and
Right.
where it came from, and is it
Yes. Yeah.
nourishing, and how is it
Yeah.
harming their bodies?
Right. That's right.
Hmm.
Because as we've talked about time and time again on
Hmm.
this podcast, Rachel, we've really shown how our just our food environment has shifted
Hmm.
from whole and real to ultra processed, and we even have
Right.
language and studies
Yeah.
around this, and it's part of our culture. The ultra processed culture
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
I'm going to call it. Yeah.
It
Hmm.
really is. And while we steer away from diet mentality and diet culture, which would say that there are bad foods and good foods. We don't use that language. I know you don't use that language with your client, with your patients, and I don't use it with my clients. We do know that food impacts our bodies and changes our body's response. It
Yeah.
does
Hmm.
interact with our cells, with our brain,
Hmm.
with our gut. So
Hmm.
whether a food is good or bad, that's up to the
Hmm.
person eating it. But we do know that there is an effect. There is a
Yeah.
downstream effect. And when we
Hmm.
understand what foods do, then we can choose whether we
Hmm.
want the consequences, whether
Right.
they're improving our health or
Yes.
perhaps damaging or setting
Yeah.
our health backwards.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
all right, so we've got these five hungers that these medications can help with. Um,
Yeah.
there are also things we can do in lifestyle medicine, we know, that impact all five of these as well.
All
So
five of
you
those.
don't
Mhm.
we don't just find these from a medication. We find these
Right.
also from
Yeah.
lifestyle. Um,
Yes.
so that's probably a really good start. We understand a little bit more now about the different categories of the medications, their names,
Mhm.
and what they've been
Mhm.
indicated for as far as the FDA goes, and then the ways that these five different mechanisms and that they're impacting for the person.
Right.
So maybe next week we come back and we spend some time kind of talking about um, typically who's a good candidate for these
Yeah.
medications.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe answering some questions people are afraid to ask, patients are afraid to ask their
Mhm.
doctors. Maybe we have a
Right.
few questions we can answer.
Mhm.
And then we can just keep going with that. I want to just say one kind of funny little anecdotal thing here about GLP-1 and that hormone. Um, you and I both listened to the same podcast recently, and they mentioned this. But then I was at the High Desert Museum over the weekend, and they had Gila monsters in
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I know that the research and kind of the correct me if I'm wrong, the finding of this
N
hormone and kind of the research came from the Gila
Mhm.
monster. And sure
Right.
enough, the little plaque under the Gila monster mentioned weight loss medications, and it gave credit to this
Yes.
animal for the GLP-1. I was like,
Right.
this is like full circle moment. Yeah. So what would you
Right.
say if there's
Yeah.
anything
Because
you'd add to that? Yeah.
yeah, because the Gila monster apparently makes a lot of this hormone and goes a long time without eating, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so scientists got curious about that, and they
Mhm.
discovered this GLP-1, and the Gila monster is also in us. Ours disappears like that. So the medication keeps it higher,
Mm,
longer, and so it has more of an effect for us. Now, I wanted to make one distinction between the semaglutide and tirzepatide. The
mhm.
semaglutide affects GLP-1, the tirzepatide affects GLP-1 and GIP. And so maybe
Ah,
that's going to be our little carrot to come back and talk about, oh, so what's the difference there?
ooh, okay.
And
Yeah.
yes, and then the other thing I want to leave people with is that it's not all magic. I mean, it sounds
Mhm.
fabulous. It sounds fabulous. And actually, it has been a game changer for so many
Mhm.
people. And I
Yeah.
am very grateful for these medications.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, and
And yeah.
there, and that the lifestyle change is as big a
Mhm.
part. Mhm. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, if it's medication only, then unfortunately we're on that same roller coaster
Yeah.
yo-yo, yeah,
Yeah.
as we
Really, the yo-yo weight loss can happen just as much
Mhm.
with a GLP-1
Mhm.
medication as it
Yeah,
can with a diet.
yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel, Sherry Collins writes in, I used to have
Oh.
Yeah, I have all 5 of your points. My favorite was the commercial hunger.
Mm.
Um, and so glad to have the guidance along with the medication. So thank you
Yeah,
for that, Sherry. Yeah.
yeah, good
Yeah.
to hear from you, Sherry. Thanks for popping in here.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a lot
Yeah.
to talk about,
So,
and this is a big conversation, and
it is.
this will be a
Yeah.
fun, yeah, this will be a fun series.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do we have a second for what's for dinner?
Yeah. What's for dinner? Well, gosh, we just got back from camping, so what's for dinner is probably some of the things we were going to be hmm, yeah, things we were eating camping. Probably like the leftovers of what's in the cooler. That's what's for dinner. What's in the cooler? Basically, I'm going to rummage through. I know I've got some good veggies still in there. Oh, I know. We made a big kind of taco bowls with sauteed bell peppers and onions and some beans and some brown rice and greens and cabbage and tomatoes and oh yeah, and now I'm getting hungry. That's what's for dinner. There we go. I found it.
Okay. That's awesome.
How about you? What's for dinner?
Yeah, well, I have so ditto on everything you said, and then we have some grass-fed chuck roast that Kenny just slow cooked in the oven with the cumin and just wonderful seasonings in there, so and onion and all that stuff. So that's what's for dinner for us. So
Yeah, it'll be like a
Simple.
Mexican night tonight for our
Yeah.
dinners.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good. All right. Well,
Well,
this
I
has been
wanted to
great.
encourage
I'm
people.
looking forward to continuing that conversation and
Yes.
more recovery, Rachel, to be honest.
And more recovery. Yes, we're both taking some time out to recover, re-entry, get back into our routines, but making sure
Yeah.
that we're recovered before we dive all the way in, so that
Yeah.
we are refreshed.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening, if you're curious about what we're talking about, if you're curious about working with Dr. Gilbert or myself, please go to OregonWeightandWellness.com, click on the link. There's links in the show notes. Reach out. You have the number memorized. What's the phone number?
Oh, 971-273-7143.
There it is. There it is. Reach out. We're happy to talk with you about it. We're happy to kind of see if this health journey is for you and if we could work with you. But stay tuned and keep tuning in week after week, because we're going to just keep talking about this. And so hopefully you'll get more information and help you make a decision.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Rachel.
Yep.
Have a great
See you
rest
guys
of your
next week.
day. Bye-bye.